The marble boardroom glowed beneath recessed lights as Damien Cole stood at the head of a polished obsidian table, his reflection cutting through the glossy surface like a second, colder version of himself. Executives shifted under the weight of his silence. His suit, ink black, perfectly sculpted, moved with effortless precision each time he turned a page. Outside the floor-to-ceiling glass, the city bowed beneath him, lights blinking like obedient stars. His day unfolded in its usual rhythm. Black SUVs, doors opened before he reached them, the muted hum of private elevators that carried only him, the soft click of expensive shoes on imported marble. Everything about his world gleamed, controlled, untouched by chaos. Across the city, Elena balanced two small hands tugging at either side of her as she pushed through the crowded bus doorway, her grocery bags digging painfully into her wrists. The harsh afternoon sun made the twins squint, and she gently pulled their tiny hoods over their heads. She moved with purposeful softness, the kind that life had forced her to master. One breath at a time, never enough rest, never enough money, but always enough love to keep going. She guided them toward the mall entrance, knowing she shouldn't even be here, knowing every polished surface inside would reflect what she lacked. Still, she came because her children needed new shoes, and the discount store inside had a sale. Her steps were quick but careful, her eyes subtly scanning for judgment before it arrived. The automatic doors parted, releasing a wash of cool, expensive air. The twins clung to her sides as shoppers brushed past, barely noticing the small woman with the frayed tote bag and tired eyes. She kept her chin up. She always did. But inside, memories lurked. Memories of a world she once touched briefly, a world that spit her out just as quickly. Unbeknownst to her, the man who had built that world was gliding through the upper floor, his presence drawing glances without effort. Damien checked his watch, gave a curt nod to his assistant, and stepped into the luxury wing of the mall. His expression held its usual restraint, controlled, unreadable, carved from years of learning not to want anything he couldn't command. Elena paused by the escalator, feeling the faint pressure in her chest that always came when life reminded her of what she'd lost, what she'd survived. She adjusted the twins' backpacks, brushing a hand over their soft curls, grounding herself in their warmth. Two worlds moving beneath the same roof. One polished, one worn, never meant to touch again. Yet both carried the quiet echo of a collision that had once burned too bright, too fast, and ended with wounds neither had ever really allowed to heal. The upscale mall shimmered with an almost unreal brightness, polished floors reflecting chandeliers that dripped light like crystal rain. Wealthy shoppers drifted from store to store, their designer bags swinging lightly, the soft murmur of luxury surrounding them. Elena stepped inside, trying to make herself smaller as she guided the twins toward the children's shoe store tucked beside a gleaming jewelry boutique. Eyes slid over her briefly, some curious, some indifferent, some quietly judgmental, before moving on to more familiar reflections of wealth. Inside the store, the air smelled of new leather and expensive polish. A sales associate glanced up, her smile tight and brittle when she saw Elena's worn sneakers and the twins' faded clothes. "Can I help you?" she asked, the tone more accusation than welcome. Before Elena could answer, the woman's gaze dropped pointedly to the grocery bag in Elena's hand. "Just so you're aware, ma'am, our prices are listed clearly on the shelves. We don't do bargaining here." Heat crept up Elena's neck. "I'm not here to bargain," she said softly. "I'm here to buy shoes for my kids." The associate exhaled dramatically, leaning on the counter as if dealing with her was a chore. "Right? Well, make sure they don't touch anything unless you're actually buying. We've had issues." Her eyes flicked to the twins, who clung to Elena's legs, confused by the tone but too shy to speak. The humiliation pressed hard against Elena's chest, but she swallowed it down like she always did. She crouched to the twins' level, smoothing their curls as she whispered, "It's okay. Let's just look." A sudden murmur spread through the walkway outside, a shift in energy she felt before she saw. Her heart tightened. She didn't want to look, but she did. Just a few steps away, Damien Cole stood in the center of a small circle of sharply dressed associates and journalists. his presence commanding the space the way gravity commanded planets. He spoke in low, controlled tones, his posture straight, his expression carved from precision and power. Even in the busy mall, conversations dulled when he glanced upward, his eyes cold and assessing as he answered a reporter's question with a clipped, authoritative certainty. The contrast between him and the world around him was stark. People leaned in when he spoke, adjusted their posture when he moved, gauging his mood with careful, respectful glances. Elena's fingers trembled against her children's shoulders. She didn't know if he'd see her, didn't know if fate was cruel enough to place them this close again. The twins tugged lightly at her sleeve, unaware of the storm unfolding inside her chest. She kept her head down, pretending to focus on the shoes, praying the past would walk past her without stopping. The twins pressed closer to Elena as she pretended to study a pair of sneakers she could barely afford. Their small fingers curled around the fabric of her shirt. They were always like this in crowded places. Two little shadows moving in perfect sync, sensing every tremor in her voice, every unspoken worry. Liam, the older by 2 minutes, had a habit of leaning his head against her hip when he felt unsure. Leah, bold in ways that came in flashes, peeked out from behind her arm with wide, curious eyes. Their matching curls, soft and unruly, glowed under the store's bright lights. Their breaths came in tiny puffs as they whispered questions too quiet for anyone but Elena to hear. They smelled faintly of baby lotion and the fruit snacks they'd eaten on the bus, comforting and familiar. But the tension at the entrance shifted the air. A cluster of reporters raised their microphones a little higher, Damien's voice dropping lower. Calm, sharp, unmistakably dominant. The sales associate's tone grew louder behind Elena, impatiently talking to a coworker about people who don't belong in upscale stores. Elena felt her stomach twist. She reached for her children, but one glance at Damien froze her in place. She hadn't seen him in years, yet her body recognized him instantly. His presence hit her like stepping into cold water. Shocking, jarring, pulling breath from her chest. She lowered her head, turning slightly so the twins wouldn't catch sight of him or the attention gathering around him. Just for a moment, only a heartbeat, her grip slipped. A child's hand slipped with it. Liam's eyes darted toward the sound of a fountain outside the store, the water glistening under the mall lights like silver threads. He nudged Leah, whispering something only twins could understand. Curiosity tugged at them harder than caution ever could. "Stay right," Elena began, but the crowd murmured loudly at that exact second, drowning her voice. The twins stepped back. 1 step, 2, and before she even realized they'd slipped from her reach, their small forms were already weaving through the legs of distracted shoppers, drawn toward the glimmering fountain and the tall man whose voice carried across the corridor. Elena turned sharply, heart leaping to her throat when her fingers met empty air. "Liam? Leah?" Her pulse raced. They were gone. She pushed past a rack of shoes, eyes scanning wildly, chest tightening with panic. Not here. Not now. Not with him this close. She suddenly remembered all those times the twins caught her looking at his pictures. How they'd ask if she liked him, and she'd say yes. They started to believe he was their father, and she never stopped them, not after she saw the glow in their eyes. She just couldn't. Damien exited the luxury boutique with the same quiet gravity that always accompanied him. Shoulders straight, suit crisp, presence sharp enough to cut through the noise around him. The doors slid open as if sensing his approach, and the entire hallway seemed to shift, conversations dipping into hushed pauses, curious eyes lifting at the same time. His assistant spoke beside him, rattling off numbers and updates, but Damien barely acknowledged the words. His focus was ahead, scanning the crowd with that controlled precision that made people instinctively step aside. The polished floor reflected his silhouette like a dark shard of authority moving through light. At the far end of the corridor, 2 tiny figures came to an abrupt halt. Liam's breath caught first. His hand found Leah's, their fingers curling tightly as they stared up at the towering man who had unknowingly eclipsed everyone around him. Leah's voice was barely a whisper, soft enough to dissolve into the hum of the mall, except the universe seemed to hold its breath for her. "Daddy?" Liam blinked, the word settling into him like something familiar he had never understood. And in the next heartbeat, before Elena's frantic voice could reach them, before reason could catch them, they both let go of fear and ran. Small feet slapped softly against the marble, curls bouncing as they crossed the space between themselves and the man they'd only seen in the framed photo Elena kept buried in her drawer. Damien's brows tightened when he noticed movement, turning his head just in time to see two children sprinting toward him with absolute certainty. Arms open, eyes shining. The hallway froze. A shopper gasped. Another covered her mouth. Then the whispers began, quick and electric. Did those kids just? Are they his? Oh my God. Is this a scandal? Phones lifted immediately, camera flashes sparking like fireflies. A few people stepped closer, pretending to browse storefront displays while recording everything. Someone murmured Damien's name with the kind of excitement usually reserved for celebrity sightings. The twins skidded to a stop right in front of him, looking up with awe so pure it softened the edges around them. Damien stared down, shock flickering across his face. So brief, so unguarded. The crowd leaned in as if witnessing a rare eclipse. "Daddy?" Leah whispered again, voice trembling with childlike certainty. Liam nodded, eyes wide. "We found you." Gasps rippled through the corridor. A reporter who had been interviewing Damien moments earlier scrambled to adjust her camera, sensing a story that would explode across the internet within minutes. Damien stood there, frozen, caught between the world he controlled and a truth he never saw coming, while dozens of eyes watched, waiting for the next blow to land. Damien stared down at the children, his mind blanking in a way it never did. Not in boardrooms, not during billion-dollar negotiations, not even in crisis management. He was a man who always understood the variables, always calculated 10 steps ahead. But now he didn't even understand step 1. Two small faces, so familiar it made something in his chest twist, looked up at him with unwavering certainty, waiting for him to say something, be something. His throat tightened, a quiet crack in an otherwise impenetrable facade. He started, voice lower than usual, roughened by confusion. "I think you've mistaken me for..." But the words never got the chance to land. "Elena!" Her own voice barely felt like hers as she shoved through the crowd, breathless, lungs burning with panic. Her heart hammered so violently she could hear it in her ears, drowning out the gasps around her. She stumbled into the open space, grabbing Liam's shoulder with shaking fingers, pulling Leah close with her other arm. The crowd murmured louder now, curiosity sharpening, phones lifting higher, angles adjusting to capture her as well. Elena felt judgment slip over her skin like ice, a familiar ache that she once thought she'd grown numb to. Damien's eyes lifted, and the world around them went painfully, terrifyingly still. For the first time in years, their eyes met. His sharp and storm-dark, hers wide and shimmering with dread. The mall noise faded into a distant, muted hum. Even the twins fell silent, sensing the shift. Damien's expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough that it cut through Elena like a blade. Shock, recognition, a flash of something wounded and furious buried beneath years of restraint. "Elena?" He breathed, as if the name had been locked somewhere inside him, untouched and forbidden. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She couldn't breathe under the weight of his gaze, under the memories it pulled to the surface. The nights they shared, the promises broken, the last moment before she walked away with a secret lodged beneath her heart. He took a slow step toward her, the crowd leaning forward with him. "You?" he whispered, disbelief threading through his voice. What is this?" Elena clutched her children tighter, her pulse trembling against her skin. She tried to steady her voice, to form a denial, an explanation, anything. But the words tangled in her throat. Damien searched her face, every emotion he'd worked years to bury rising like a tide he couldn't control. Her breath hitched, his jaw tightened. The years between them collapsed into a single, heavy, merciless moment. And nothing, absolutely nothing, felt safe anymore. Damien's breath came slow and controlled, but the tension coiled beneath his composure was unmistakable. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Elena, and the phones pointed at them, could catch the edge beneath it. "Elena," he said, each syllable tightened by restrained fury. "You're going to tell me what's going on." Her fingers trembled where they rested on the twins' shoulders, but she lifted her chin anyway, a quiet strength rising through the fear. "They're just children." They were confused. "I'm taking them home." "Confused," Damien repeated, voice low, sharp. "They ran to me. They called me." He cut himself off, jaw flexing as if the word itself was dangerous. Leah leaned into his leg without hesitation, tiny hands clutching the fabric of his suit jacket as if he were safe, familiar. Liam reached out too, brushing Damien's sleeve with a tentative touch, eyes shining with recognition he couldn't explain. The contact jolted Damien. He looked down at them, really looked, and something flickered in his gaze. Something he tried to smother. Something he didn't want to acknowledge in front of a crowd that was practically holding its breath. Elena swallowed hard. "Please," she whispered. "Let me take them. This isn't the place." "Oh, trust me," Damien said, stepping into her space with an icy calm that made the air thicken. "We are going to talk, whether here or somewhere else." His eyes locked onto hers, steady and unyielding. "For years, Elena. For years of silence. And now this." Her voice cracked despite her attempt at control. "I did what I had to do." His brows lowered. "You think disappearing was your only option?" Her hesitation was all the answer he needed. Damien's gaze darkened, old wounds crashing back to the surface with the force of a storm he'd tried too long to outrun. The twins pressed closer to him again, drawn to something they didn't understand but felt in their bones. And the crowd, hungry for every second, edged closer, phones raised like weapons. Damien's assistant rushed into the scene, panic in his eyes as he saw the filming, the whispers, the scandal being born in real time. He leaned toward security, voice barely contained. "We need to control this. Now." 2 security guards approached, crisp uniforms cutting through the tension. One glanced at Damien, then at Elena, measuring the situation instantly. "Sir," his personal guard said quietly but firmly, "your assistant wants to know if we should escort them," he nodded toward Elena and the children, "to a private room for DNA confirmation." The world stopped. Elena's breath shattered in her chest. Damien's head lifted slowly, eyes narrowing, expression hardening into something darker, deeper, more dangerous than anything she'd ever seen on him. The unresolved history between them surged into the open air, raw, jagged, impossible to contain. Elena whispered, almost inaudible, "Damien, please don't do this." But he didn't reply, and the silence that followed was the most terrifying answer of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your thoughts mean a lot to me, and trust me, the next story will be even better. You won't want to miss it. Turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know.